I'm making this video because I get a ton of questions about optics, especially when I make a video, so I figured I'd try and get ahead of all the questions while I have everything out. I'm going to try and make it as fast as I can, just like down and dirty what I use. I use everything on this table. The only two I don't own are these two over here. And I'm going to start like most expensive to cheapest because there are some expensive ones I don't love, and then there's some cheap ones I really do like. So if you see me shooting seriously, you're gonna see me using this. This is the Zero Compromise 5-27. This is my favorite scope that I've used currently, and I've gotten behind just about all of them. I don't love the way the turrets re-zero on this, the grub screws situation, but otherwise I like how they lock. I like how they feel. I like the amount of available elevation. What I hate is the illumination knob. This makes no sense. If you travel at all, you're going to bump it, and the battery's going to die. So there's really no reason to keep a battery in there, in my opinion, if you're traveling a lot. I really like the optical quality. Obviously, that's what they're all about, but I don't know how to describe this. And I guess part of the reason I'd like to make the video is because hopefully somebody can answer me. When you're trying to describe how the image looks through the scope, in terms of the size, I've researched it, and the only guess I can come up with is apparent field of view. That's the idea that you're looking through a flat screen TV versus looking through a cardboard tube. Now, I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, and I have not been able to come up with a solid answer by anyone, but when you look through the Zero Compromise, it looks like you're looking at a flat screen TV. That's compared to the Tangent, which is better in just about every way, except for that apparent field of view, or whatever it is that you call that. To me, when you look through one of these, while I prefer the turrets, the image quality is excellent, the illumination is better. I especially love how you re-zero these toollessly. That's like one of my favorite features on these scopes. When you look through this by way of comparison to a ZCO, it feels like you're looking through a toilet paper tube versus at a flat screen TV. Now that's the phenomenon I'm trying to describe. So if anybody knows what that is, put it in the comments, because I'm super curious and nobody can seem to tell me. But these are like the high-end scopes, the ZCO. I have two of these. These are what I usually use for most things. The Tangent is on my wife's PRS rifle, and then this is what my wife used to use. This is the dedicated ELR gun scope now. This is the 7-35 ATACR, which you'll see in that context a lot. I like it. It's good. I kind of wish it had locking turrets. I like how the illumination is this button here. What I don't like is the rotating ocular. This kills the scope for me. The Mil-XT reticle is amazing, and the optical clarity, the quality is good, but the fact that the ocular housing spins as you adjust magnification completely kills this for me, because if I'm going to spend a lot of money on a scope, I'm going to get scopes that do what I want, and that ain't it. All three of them, very good optical quality, pretty good depth of field, even at high mag. You know, I don't have many complaints, but I won't buy these anymore for that reason. And then when we're talking about, okay, well, we got Night Force here. This is an NX8 4-32. Last week I got a question about why this is on a 16-inch AR. It's because it's floating around. I had it, and it's light and short, relatively speaking, and it fits really well with my red dot because this cap doesn't go out too far and it doesn't block that red dot. I like how the ocular housing doesn't spin with magnification. While there's lots of things wrong with this, I don't love the turrets. I don't love the way the turrets re-zero. It's probably my most used scope, at least in the last year or so, just because it's been on the rifle. I've been shooting a lot. So I really like these NX8s. And where you can get them for like $1,400-1,500, I think they punch way above their weight. I would buy more of these if I was looking for a scope for a rifle. Maybe not 4-32, but something kind of in that range. Obviously, it isn't up to the optical performance of the ZCO or Tangent, but it's pretty good. It does everything I need it to. High-end, kind of, the Steiner. This is not mine. This is a 3-18, but for a brief period of time, these could be had for, which was an absolute steal. I love these. I love the way you can lock or unlock the turrets. You don't have to lift. These are so good, and the image quality is excellent. I don't know a ton about them technically, but I've really enjoyed what little time I've had on it. Although personally I have a hard time resolving the center dot when I'm at max mag. But my eyes may be kind of screwed up, so that could be me. A big part of the reason I'm making this video is this. This is the Eotech Vudu 5-25. This is the worst scope I've ever owned, certainly for the price. I think these were like $2,000 when I got it. I understand that it's short, and so sacrifices must be made when you're building a short scope. But when you are looking at a high contrast situation, especially at higher magnification, the chromatic aberration makes it look almost unusable. I like how the turret's zero toollessly, but that is the only thing I like about this scope. It's heavy. The ocular housing spins with the magnification. The illumination is almost useless. And your windage turret cap is so large that you can't use this with a canted red dot. So this is that between all of that, the narrow parallax, the narrow depth of field, it's just like the worst scope I've ever had, which is so weird because I want to say Ilya with the LO really liked his. So I was super stoked. And I was disappointed when I didn't love it, but it's like the worst and I hate it. And the reason you see it in the videos is because it's like my throwaway scope. Like when I'm just tossing a scope on something that it doesn't live on anything permanently, that's the scope I use. So those are kind of all the more expensive ones. I have this up here just because this is the Vortex 1-10, and I get that people hate this because of the small eye box and the reticle and blah, 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 blah. I have used this a ton in 2-gun, and I love it. I haven't used it in the last year or so because I'm more of a red dot magnifier kind of guy now, but I think that's an excellent scope, and I'm sorry that people don't like it. I do a lot, and I'm looking for a gun to put it on, but I don't have one yet. Lower end optics, I have here, I put this on the table just because this is one of my oldest scopes. It's a Strike Eagle 318. It looks really good for what I paid, which was like nothing, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And it's my only MOA scope, and it's still kicking around. It's like terrible, but also, I don't know if it's nostalgia, but this is the Razor HD LHT 4.5-25. It's like a very lightweight version of the Razor. I hate this scope. Optically, it doesn't look too bad. A bit of like a toilet paper tube, but very bright for the size, very light. But it just feels like so bad. It feels like it was made very cheaply, and so I would never recommend one of those unless you're trying to make like the lightest rifle possible. This is the Primary Arms SLX 318, which I actually like quite a bit. It is in the worst scope mount of all time, the Griffin something mount, which is like objectively the worst mount possible. You can't do worse than this. None of this shit holds zero on none of the attachments hold zero. And I get that they have a new one now that has like some steel like bosses in it, but I will never buy another Griffin product for the rest of my life because of how fucking terrible this is. But anyway, I like the scope quite a bit. It's so cheap. I want to say I got this for like, I don't know, 250, 300 bucks, something like that. Really like the way it looks. Like it has a really excellent apparent field of view. I don't know about the actual field of view, but the reticle is kind of useless. It's very fun to shoot through, but very difficult to hold over. Obviously, not having locking turrets is a thing. But for what it is, again, this is like ultra cheap. I really like this quite a bit. And I love that this turret is small because it's easier to put a side-mounted red dot. So I kind of like that one. I've been using it a bunch lately. I like it. And then lastly is the most shilled product on the internet, the Arken EP5. First of all, disclaimer, don't ever listen to anyone's opinion if they've taken any money from Arken or any products. There are so many shills, and you can tell a shill by someone who puts a fucking Arken on a $5,000 rifle and tells you it's just as good, or talks about how great the optical quality is while using a scope cam that you can't see anything through, okay? So, I take this with the understanding that if Arken offered me money right now to talk about their product, I would refuse because of how scummy all of their marketing seems, okay? And that's just me from the outside. I don't know. I mean, for what it's worth, Arken's banned from Reddit because of how like backhanded their marketing was there. So like, our long range, you can't talk about them anymore because of how scummy they've been. All right, less angsty voiceover here. I'm not frustrated with Arken or the product. I think the product is fine, and Arken's marketing team is really good. It's the influencers or the gun tubers or whatever who push the product dishonestly that frustrate me. So just to make that clear, I've got no problem with them. I just don't like the influencers who are kind of bullshitting everybody for a paycheck. All of that said, I kind of like them because of how cheap they are. You use the product codes and you can get these super, super cheap. And you can tell they're cheap. But I really like these big turrets, not just because they're relatively easy to adjust and because they sound and feel pretty good, but like my father, I got one of these for free. My father was having a hard time seeing his Swamp Fox reticle, Swamp Fox turret, sorry. And so I gave him one of these for his 22 PRS because he could see these turrets much better. So that's my favorite thing about the Arkens. Yeah, they look fine. I would say for the price, they're big, they're heavy. I recommend Arkens to people who shoot 2 to 3 times a year. And if you shoot more than 2 to 3 times a year, or you're even remotely serious about shooting, don't buy an Arken. It's that simple. But if you're a casual enjoyer or somebody who's very casual about it, going to shoot a couple times, you'll probably be fine. That said, when they inevitably break, the casual shooter is much more likely not to notice that they've broken. So that's another thing. As much shit as I talk about their quality, this one hasn't broken yet. And the only scope I've had to send back was this Tangent Theta 5-25. So the $350 scope has not broken, but the $4,500 Tangent has. And their customer service was excellent. They did fix it right away. But who's to say, right? And then I mentioned it, but the high-end Swamp Fox scopes, I've actually had some luck with. I like the way they look. I don't have any on the table right now, but I like the way they look. They're very cheesy. They remind me a lot of the Razer LHT in the way they're like built kind of cheesy, but honestly, they're probably built a little bit better. But anyway, that's kind of my big takeaway. Of all the things on the table, the one piece of optical equipment, shooting equipment that I would give all of this up for is the Swarovski NL Pure 10x42s. These are my favorite piece of shooting equipment. These might be one of my favorite possessions, period. You can see every particle and blade of grass and little bit of dust flying through the air with these, and it makes wind calls a million times easier. Plus you can spot 223 hits at 1,000 because the clarity is so good. And I always talk about clarity is more important than magnification 100% of the time. So if you know anything about that where you're looking through the scope and it looks like a big image versus it looks like a tube, if you know how to describe that, like what words to use to describe that, put them in the comments because I'm super curious and I scoured the internet and I don't think I was able to articulate it well with Google. But I just figured I'd make this because everybody asked about optics. I like all of these. I think if I were to buy a scope tomorrow, it would be a Collis. Okay, because I've looked through a bunch of those at matches and they look amazing. And I'm just curious to see what it's like to use one of those long term. Scopes I wouldn't buy again, or scopes I wouldn't buy at all. I wouldn't buy a Tangent. I wouldn't buy the Eotech. I wouldn't buy basically any Razer or Vortex products except for the Razer Gen 3, which is phenomenal. I wouldn't buy an ATACR. I'd basically buy a ZCO. I'd like to buy a Collis. I'd buy more NX8s. I'd buy the SLX. And I definitely get the Steiners. If you get the Steiners on the cheap, good to go. And the Bushnell Match Pro ED are super good. I put them way above their price point at $650, $700. Anyway, questions, put them in the comments. I'll answer everything.